Hi there, business owner. Do you want a better understanding of business finance, what your numbers actually mean, and stories of the highs and lows of business, where I'll be sharing my tips and tricks every week? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 3Bs podcast. We're on episode 44, so thank you so much for listening. As you know, I really appreciate all the likes, shares, follows, reviews left on all the different platforms that you can listen to the 3Bs podcast on. It means that my podcast is pushed out to more businesses, more business owners, so that together we can all build better businesses, which is the goal here after all. I wanted to take a second to say we made it. It is the 1st of February. We survived January. I don't know about you guys, but January is a really tough, challenging month for me personally as well as professionally. I think the dark mornings and the dark nights and the fact it's cold. We've had all the storms this month. We've had snow. We've had everything they could possibly throw at us. And the January blues are something I personally suffer from anyway. So I think the weather and the temperatures haven't helped at all, specifically because we've had quite a warm, mild December. But professionally, ABCS UK are a bookkeeping, accountancy and business development practice. The self-assessment tax returns take up a large portion of the client work. And January inevitably is crazy busy, always is, and it's just full steam ahead for the whole month. The bags under my eyes tell me that we made it, but we made it just. So this week I wanted to talk about resetting for February. It's almost like a second new year for us. Like now the self-assessments are out of the way, we can finally focus as a business on where we're going to go for the rest of 2024. I hope this helps. As I said, February is kind of a second new year, fresh start. Tax returns are out of the way. It's time for us to reset and refocus and plan out the rest of 2024, specifically the next couple of months, on what is happening. There's big changes going on in the practice. There's big changes going on in the business as a whole. So it's important for me to really check in now that I have a bit more brain capacity and I'm not swamped with tax returns to plan. I wanted to say that it's always okay to reset and go again in business and in life. It's okay to have a wobble and go back to it. A lot of people would probably worry that it's too soon to reset after we've just reset in January for a new year. But for us in the finance world, in the accountancy world, it very much feels like this is our new year. And with January being such a challenge for every single business owner I spoke to in January, now seems like the perfect time to write January 2024 off as a free trial month and start again 1st of February with a bit more motivation, a better mindset and full of positivity, ready to go and smash those goals. So what does a reset and a refocus look like for me personally and for my businesses? Well, we have looked at the next 2 to 3 months and looked at what we'd originally planned back in January and looked back at our goals for 2024, our word of the year for 2024, and really analysed whether what we'd set out to do at the beginning of January is still doable, is still, the goal is still achievable. Maybe it's not too easy, we need to increase it. Maybe it seems a bit too far-fetched now, and we need to rein it in slightly to make it more manageable and achievable, because we don't want to put ourselves off before we've even gone towards these goals. I really sit with them and see if they still resonate. Sometimes they do and it's absolutely fine, but quite often I find January throws up a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, a lot of changes that are possible and pivots. So I always like to go back to those goals and sit with them and see if they still suit. When I say sit with them, I mean I go back and look at them and I go line by line and I'm like, is that still something I want to achieve? Is that still achievable? Is that too achievable or is that not achievable enough? And tweak accordingly. I then send that out to my employee because I like them to be on the same page that I am. I want them to be striving for the same thing I do. It also takes away that emotion that quite often I hold on to because the company is my baby and I've built it from the ground. My employee is fantastic at looking over things with a fresh set of eyes and a different perspective without that emotional attachment of the business. And once we're clear on the next few months of goals and the goals for the rest of 2024, the next thing that I've done is I've broken them down into tiny little actionable steps. Now, for example, I am going to be hosting a webinar on Tuesday the 27th of February at 12 noon for half an hour to go through a bit of a debrief of my tax season and how it worked for us as a practice and as a business. I'm going to go through things like what we learned, things we implemented last year, whether they worked or not, mistakes we made, and what we're going to do differently for the 23-24 tax year, because I think it's really important to show the whole of business, the highs, the lows. We all make mistakes. Sometimes our choices aren't the best. Although we do the best we can with what we have at the time, I think it's important to reflect on that and acknowledge what did work as well as what didn't work. So we're hosting that on Tuesday, 27th of February. I'll pop the link in the show notes for you to sign up to the webinar. If you can't attend the webinar, we will email out a recording afterwards. If there's time at the end, there'll also be a Q&A. So if there's any burning questions you've got around business or finance, feel free to drop them to us either on social media before the event or in the box on the day. But in order to put this webinar on, there is lots and lots of different elements to this webinar. So we need to schedule the webinar. This time it's through Zoom. We need to set up a booking page so that people that want to come along to the webinar can register and get the link to join. We need to plan how we're going to tell people about it. We need to create any marketing materials or advertising, for example. All of these little actionable steps seem like a lot altogether, but when you break them down into individual baby steps, it's a lot easier. So today we looked at it, we wrote them all down as individual steps and tasks in our workflow system, in our CRM, and I know that when I go in the office tomorrow morning, I can click onto this task and do the first thing, the very first thing, and tick that off. And that's, you do the same for your goals. If you have those tiny little actionable steps, you're going to get there a lot quicker and with a lot less resistance. The last thing I wanted to mention on this week's episode is that the HMRC have revealed that at midnight on the 31st of January, which is deadline day, cut-off moment, there was still over 1.1 million tax returns not submitted. Now, with the HMRC, if you do not submit your tax return on time, you will receive an instant £100 penalty fine, instantly. But not only do you do that, any tax that you are due to pay will also have interest applied on them. So I encourage you to, if you do currently have a tax return outstanding and you can do it yourself, please do it. If not, please do come and get in touch with us at ABCS UK, because we do have capacity to do them. Now that January is out the way, we can get them done for you, and the quicker that they're done, the smaller the interest payment will be on any tax due. I wouldn't recommend just rushing them and submitting them just as they are. Please check they're correct and finalised, or get some help from like myself or another bookkeeper or an accountant. And next year, try to ensure that you don't leave it to the last moment. I understand. I am also a deadline dancer. Mine is usually the very last tax return to be done on the 31st of January, usually around 9 p.m. in the evening. This year I did a bit better. It went in on the 15th of January. So we're making progress, but I really do aim to get mine to be one of the first to be submitted for the 23-24 tax season in April, because I feel like I should lead by example, and then I can also tell all my clients that mine's done, so they need to get their information to me, which hopefully will speed up the process for 23-24. So I hope that's been a useful episode for you. I hope you've thought about, or will go and think about, what you want over the next couple of months, what you want your business to look like over the next couple of months, and make those small actionable steps. As I said, I am hosting a free webinar on Tuesday the 27th of February at 12 noon for half an hour where we are having a debrief from the 22-23 tax season. You're all more than welcome to join. If you can't make it live, there will be recordings sent out afterwards, and I will pop the link to sign up in the show notes of this podcast episode. If you have any trouble finding it or you want any more information, you can drop us a DM on all our social media platforms or email info@abcsuk.com, and myself or my employee will get back to you with any answers to your questions. Thank you for joining me again, and I'll see you next week for the next episode. And that brings us to the end of another week of the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Thank you so much for listening. I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, rate and review this podcast wherever you are listening to it, so that I can reach more business owners and help them build better businesses. See you next week for the next episode.